Hello and welcome to the MAA Seaway workshop, Talking Math Online with LaTeX. I'm Keith Jones, Associate Professor of Mathematics at SUNY Oneonta. This workshop was presented on June 29th, 2020. We had a minor glitch getting the recording started, so we're just going to drop in about a minute after the presentation began. Please check the video description for links, including a PDF copy of the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention, so Elizabeth has shared this. If you do open this PDF file in your web browser, you can click any of these 4 links, and these are blog posts that I've created which go into a little bit more detail, basically putting together what I've been able to learn about using LaTeX, pros and cons of different kinds of software, how Mathjax works, in a bunch of introductory resources for doing LaTeX mathematics, and finally learning management systems. So you can click any of these links. You might want to do right-click and open in a new tab. And then you'll see a website which shares in probably excruciating detail things that you wouldn't want to hear me say out loud over the course of this hour. So there's a lot more detail on these web links. So you might find those more interesting. Okay, how are we doing so far? Any questions before we get started? All right. So let's start with just a little bit about LaTeX itself. LaTeX is a massive, powerful system. Many of us are familiar with it and use it, day in and day out with our jobs. And it's become incredibly popular because it is a wonderful solution for conveying scientific and mathematical knowledge. And it does it in a fairly intuitive fashion. So if you've never seen LaTeX code before, I'm just going to run through this line here with you. Here, the $$ says I'm going to enter math mode in LaTeX. I'm going to start typing out some math code. And here I'm using a command that comes with, the AMS provides a package called AMS Math. And if you want a matrix with square braces, then you just use begin B matrix, and that starts the matrix. And then x1, you'll notice the underscore does a subscript. The ampersand says move to the next column. The double backslash starts a new line. And so we continue building our matrix, and then we close off our matrix. And then I create a vector V. Greek letters are easy to use, referencing them by name. And then I close off my math, and I get this. So it's very intuitive and very nice. And for somebody who writes in LaTeX every day, you become able to look at the code. It's kind of like the movie The Matrix, right? You see the code and you read the mathematics. So of course, this is still far more beautiful, seeing the nicely rendered mathematics. So I've got one more slide to convince people that mathematics is awesome, and then I'll move on. Or sorry, to convince people that LaTeX is awesome. I hope I don't need to convince anybody in this workshop that mathematics is awesome. So I just want to kind of mention some common sense names and symbols. I already mentioned the underscore, but if you use the caret, which is Shift-6 on the keyboard, you can do superscripts. And then just like common sense names like backslash inft. I mean, did they have to leave out the 2 I's? Probably not, but they did. You remember it after you've done it twice. Circ for a circle or degree or function composition, perp. So the hard part becomes, figuring out what all these symbols are when you need them, right? And I'll mention really quickly a wonderful resource for that if you have never seen it before. If you want this right arrow that I've been drawing, you just do backslash right arrow. And then here I just have a nice little integral using the fraction symbol, the int, pi, sine, etc., etc. Okay, and if there's a command that you wish existed but doesn't, you can create it by using new command, which creates a macro. So for example, if you want to typeset the blackboard bold reals, new command backslash reals, etc., etc. This right here creates the command reals, which then lets me typeset this wherever I want to. So okay, so that is some natural mathematics, and let's see. So like I said, the hard part is what's the command for this? What's the command for that? That's where it can be really, really frustrating at times if you're new to LaTeX. The modern state of web search is really good because if you just say, how do I do this? into Google or Bing or whatever you like, you'll probably actually get a Stack Exchange response. Oops, you'll get a Stack Exchange response, which tells you how to do whatever you need to do. But I just want to quickly show everybody this website, Detechify. If you've never seen it, it's kind of a beautiful thing. So I'm just going to open that up real quick. So Detechify lets you draw a symbol, like perhaps I'll draw a delta. You don't have to draw it beautifully. I'm just doing that with my mouse, and that loads. So can everybody see that? Okay. So, okay. I only see like 3 people visible, so the people who are visible are not giving me thumbs up. So I'm going to assume lack of complaint as a thumbs up. Okay, so that draws a delta, but what I really want is a partial derivative, not a delta. So okay, so I draw a partial derivative. So if you've never seen Detechify, it's a wonderful site for figuring out this. So for people who are new to learning LaTeX, this is a site that you want to have bookmarked. But really, in the end, web search is going to help you, but there are tons of tutorials out there. One of the pages that I linked has many, many tutorials. So let's see. So if you just go to the resources for LaTeX, there's all kinds of tutorials and symbol references and stuff like that. Okay, so that's basically all I'm going to do for if you've never done LaTeX. But if you remember some of these basic things like the underscore and the caret for superscript, \int for int, then later on when we're exploring mathematics, you can try some things out for yourself, \frac, etc., etc. Okay. So what is the state of mathematics online? How do people typeset mathematics online? And the answer until about a decade ago, the answer was we don't really typeset mathematics online. We typeset it offline, and then we share an image. And this, I would say this, as far as mathematical things online goes, this is probably the most sordid of all the history. That is, it's had a long and very frustrating history of trying to put mathematics online and not doing a great job of it. But one site that's really got it nailed down is Wikipedia. Many of the mathematics symbols you see on Wikipedia are loaded up as images. Most of them are scalable images, and they render very nicely. So Wikipedia has done a pretty good job of getting their mathematical stuff together so that they can display their math nicely. There's another website out there that's worth mentioning right now called codecogs.com. If you go to codecogs.com, you can type in some LaTeX. It will generate an image for you, which you can then use on your own website. You wouldn't want to do that by hand, but there are automated processes that can do that for you as well. So I'll talk about one website that basically lets you build your own web page and handles going out and picking up images from CodeCogs later on. Okay, so math as an image was basically how it was done for probably about 15, 20 years. It's still done that way by some places, but it has some issues. First of all, some standard image formats don't support transparent backgrounds, so the math would have a different blocky background. PNG images do support transparent backgrounds, but you can see that they don't maintain good quality. And often inline images don't line up nicely. So you get something that like we see here. So I just wrote testing writing x+1 in a sentence, and you see that the x+1 is shifted up. It's not very pretty. And it's significant. This whole image is scaled up a little bit, so the normal writing itself is a little blurry. But you'll notice the x+1 is significantly more blurry. And so that's a problem. This would have been great in 1995, but this is what I created last week on Blackboard. This is Blackboard's standard tech rendering. And I mean, it kind of does the job, but it's certainly not attractive. And it's kind of dropping this image in there, which doesn't scale well. If you have a student who has vision impairment and needs to zoom in very closely to see things, this can be a big problem for them. So what's the alternative? Well, Mathjax has existed for over a decade now, and Mathjax basically takes LaTeX code and turns it into either HTML for you with CSS styling if necessary, or into an image which is a high quality image that renders nicely, or it uses MathML, which is an underlying technology that you don't need to know what MathML is to deal with that. So the nice thing about Mathjax is it's built on JavaScript, which means it's easy to drop into any web page. It sounds intimidating if you've never programmed anything before to say, oh, this uses JavaScript. But it's extremely simple to drop into a web page. You don't need to install anything. It can be called from the cloud with as little as a single line of HTML. And your web browser and possibly the cloud server that you called it from do the work. So you don't have to do anything in particular. You don't need any extra software or anything like that. It just does it all for you. All right. So here's just a quick visual example. Again, this was rendered by me last week on Blackboard. This is me using Mathjax on Blackboard on top and Blackboard's built-in mathematics rendering on the bottom. So you can see there's a pretty significant difference in how they render. Okay, so now for our first activity, should you wish to take part. If you don't wish to take part, then you can choose to just kind of follow along with me as I do it. Oh, I guess I lied. So before I do that, I just want to mention Mathjax actually has a really nice user configuration, which you can access by just right-clicking on the mathematics that it displays. It has a variety of settings, such as changing the rendering, accessibility settings, and such things. Now is a good time for me to mention that if you happen to be using Safari and your fonts don't show up, I tested this out with Safari the other day with an older version of Safari. I hope the newer versions work, but my MacBook is not updated, so I don't know that. I couldn't test it myself. So if you happen to be using Safari and you see that, for example, the X or the Y or the numbers are not showing up when Mathjax tries to type something, what you want to do is go to Math Settings and go to the renderer and change it to SVG. And if you change it away from HTML to SVG, that should render nicely on the Mac. So if you have an issue if you happen to be using Safari right now and you run into that, you're not seeing things properly, switch the renderer. And I'll try to remember to actually demonstrate that when we do a live Mathjax. So let's do that right now. If you can create an HTML file, which isn't that hard, it's just typing up some text, then you can get Mathjax running for yourself. You don't need to go anywhere fancy. All you need is a web browser and an internet connection. So in short, what we're going to do is create an HTML file that calls Mathjax and has some LaTeX built into it. And then we're just going to open that file, that local file, in our web browser. And so,
sorry to interrupt. Before we get too far along, will the Safari problem that you mentioned be an issue for students trying to view math using Mathjax?
So again, you'll have to ask them to click this. So let me show you, actually. I'm going to open up this. That's a good question, Elizabeth.
It was not from me.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good question from whoever asked it. So let me go ahead and open this up. And some of you may be in Safari right now. If you are, feel free to pipe up in the chat about your experience with this. So for example, if you are able to click right over there, or maybe I'll just copy this into the chat let's see, when I'm screen sharing. Okay, here we go.
I think I got it.
You got it? Okay. Oh, yeah, good. So yeah, so if you access that site, you should be able to see right now the same mathematics that I'm seeing. So if there are folks in Safari who cannot see that, so first of all, I'm hoping that modern versions of Safari, my version of Safari is probably about 4 years old. So modern versions should work better. If they don't, you just want to go to Math Settings, Math Renderer, SVG. You're going to see it's going to reset my thing here, and it created it as, now it's an image. Notice I can't highlight the little bits and pieces of it. That's because it's a full image now. But if I go back to Math Settings, Math Renderer, common HTML is the one that you ideally want to be using. That is the standard. So common HTML. It's faster than the HTML CSS one. If you do this, then you can actually cut and paste for what it's worth. Pasting that somewhere might not actually get you much. So but that's how you can tell if it's an image or HTML. So were there any folks in the chat who found that the works? Okay, thank you, Xiao. So Xiao is saying it's working in Safari 13, which is the, yeah, great. So that's what I expected. Modern Safari should work well. Good. So if a student is finding that it's not working, it is possible that they might have a non-standard browser or something. Then changing the renderer to SVG should fix that. All browsers should be able to display SVG. Okay, so let's actually try it. So we're going to run through the steps of trying Mathjax out without trying too hard. If you want to cheat, let's see, we can just go to this file here. And I'm going to put this in the chat. So this will just let you go directly to, and actually if I open it up in Chrome, if you download this, you can open it on your file, on your computer and see that it works nicely. So if you download that HTML file by clicking Save As, then you can open it locally and see that there's nothing special happening on my web server. It's just the web browser. I'm pretty sure if I click on this, it'll actually, yeah, see it renders it. So, but you can see how it works just by doing that. So let's just, I'm going to run through the steps of typing that up for myself, just so everybody can see there's no tricks behind the scenes. So, so step one, your web browser has to support JavaScript. That is non-negotiable. Mathjax runs on JavaScript. JavaScript is enabled by default on all major modern web browsers, but it's possible that you might have disabled it for some reason. So you'll have to make sure that it's enabled. So that's what I call step 0 there. Step 1 is, okay, don't install anything. This is just telling you that you don't have to install Mathjax for yourself. There are professional content delivery networks that will handle it for you. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I'm really here because I want to get Mathjax working on my learning management system, then you might decide to open up a window in your learning management system and edit the HTML there. Unless I know that it can work in Blackboard, and my experience reading about other ones is that you're probably going to run into trouble on other ones. But if your learning management system lets you use JavaScript, then you'll be able to do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and open it in a standard file. So I'm going to go, let's see, let me try changing how I share my screen. Okay, so now, is there just a way to share your whole desktop in Zoom, or maybe I'll just open, I should have thought that through about how I would do this. So let's see, if I do portion of screen, okay.
Yeah, I was talking to myself to talk you through it.
Okay. We're good. Okay. So, okay. So now everybody can see a part of my screen, right? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to my File Explorer, create a new folder, and just create a text file in that folder. So now you can do this however you want in your own operating system, but I'm going to create a file and call it, no, I keep wanting to do exclamation points because I'm excited, but I can't do that. So I'm just going to call it test.html. And then I'm going to open this in my favorite text editor. My favorite text editor, I do not recommend to anybody who doesn't already use it. That is Vim. But you might just use Notepad or TextEdit on a Mac. And then I'm going to go back here, and this is going to tell me what script I want to call. So once I've got just a file that has the HTML extension, I'm just going to copy this line of code, And all this is an HTML script call to a Mathjax server. So I'm just going to copy that line of code, and I'm going to paste it into my web browser. And that's it. That's literally all the HTML I need. It doesn't need to be valid, because web browsers, while they tell you they want your HTML to be valid, and your HTML should be valid, they'll render it just fine. So I'm not going to bother with anything else fancy right now. That's my script call. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add some mathematics. So I'm going to say, let's see, single $sign won't work, which is what you're used to if you use LaTeX a lot. It won't work unless you configure it to work, and I have not configured it to work. So I'm just going to use backslash parentheses, and let's say, and you can all test my math knowledge here, if x squared is less than 0, then x is complex. Okay. And maybe I'll add, maybe I will use a little bit more HTML, just so I'll put those in paragraph tags. And then I'll just do something, more fancy. So just typing in some mathematics here in LaTeX. Okay, and if the mathematics LaTeX code that I've typed is valid, when I save this, to my HTML file, and then just open that HTML file in a browser just by right-clicking and open with Chrome, we'll see that some of it was valid, but some of it I must have done something wrong. So let's go have a look back here and see what I did. I didn't actually give it mathematics. So if you want display mathematics, which is centered and rendered on its own line, then you want backslash brackets. So the backslash parentheses will do inline math, and display math will be rendered with brackets. Okay, so then I'll just reload that, Control R, and not OCirc, int is what I was thinking. Okay. This is the joy of live demonstrations, right? So you can try that out yourself. That's all I'm doing. And there we go. We have a nice fancy integral, which probably has no actual significant meaning. But so were people able to try that out, or did anybody run into trouble?
We got some notes in the chat that Andrew was able to manage it in Brightspace, and as was Leah. So this is
good news. Good. All right.
Joel,
so I think let's just quickly see if I had anything else I wanted to say there. So the other things were just the steps there. Call Mathjax, type in some LaTeX, and then open it in your browser. And then, so if there's a deep dive into Mathjax on this web page here in this article. So very quickly, I'll just mention, I talk a little bit about the underlying technology. I talk about its features, its inputs and outputs. I'll mention this when I get back to the presentation. And then I talk about some tricks you can do. For example, you can run Mathjax dynamically. So if you go to this article, scrolling down, you can actually have a little text box in your web page that renders mathematics as people type it. How that technology might be useful to you is up to you to figure out, but it's possible. And if I figured out how to do it, I promise you, you are capable of it as well. And so this is just rendering in real time here, right? So hopefully it's rendering in real time. So let's see. There we go. It'll wait until you stop typing, and then you'll see that it updates it there. So, and again, that took me about 5 lines of JavaScript. So it's very straightforward to kind of add that kind of thing to a web page. So that's some of the functionality and features of Mathjax. You can, if you want to see the original tech that came from that, you can use the context menu, and it'll get you that. And so you can actually, if somebody's done something in Mathjax, you can learn how they did it by just seeing the original LaTeX. Okay, so jumping back to the presentation, I think I'll go back. I think this was the only thing I did not need Chrome for. So I'm gonna go back and share just Chrome. And let's see. Okay, so a little bit more about Mathjax. So Mathjax supports LaTeX input, and that's what this is all about, but it also supports ASCII math, which is a simpler mathematics markup language that you might be interested in if you're thinking about getting your students to write mathematics. So I'm not going to talk about ASCII math today, but it's worth being aware that there's an alternative to LaTeX if, for example, you're looking for something a little simpler or something a little quicker. Mathjax also supports MathML, which probably won't be relevant to you from an input perspective, but for an output perspective, that's how it supports accessibility. MathML is used by screen readers to make mathematics more accessible. And as I mentioned before, you can either render the mathematics as HTML or SVG. And the setting that we were using before common HTML is the default setting. That's the current standard. Okay, it supports pretty high quality zooming. If I jump back to here, one of the fancy things that I can do, if I go here and go to math settings, scale all math, and change that to 150%. Now, all the mathematics I see on the page will be 150% larger. If you're finding for some reason that that it's too big, you can change it back to 100% or 90% or whatever you want. So, but there's also under the accessibility, where is it? Oh, there's the zoom trigger and zoom factor. So I currently have this configured. When I alt click on my mathematics, it will zoom in. So that might be something that's also helpful, and that's just built in. So again, those are nice factors when you're thinking about accessibility issues. Okay, so now we're going to jump away from Mathjax. That hopefully gives you a sense that if you want to do things with Mathjax, you can get into it pretty quickly, and it does a pretty good job rendering nice mathematics. If you're trying to use it on a place that supports it, if you have your own web page or anything like that, it should work out nicely. I'm going to talk about some platforms that support including mathematics in your conversations. Some of them do use Mathjax. Some of them have their own solutions. Some of them intentionally use a non-Mathjax solution. So to begin with, I want to talk about basically educational discussion platforms. And there are 3 in mind that look pretty good. My experience is I have not used one of them. CampusWire is the one that I have not used. I've used one, and the other 2 I've used somewhat extensively with a class. So CampusWire, and again, if you can click this link, it'll take you to the web page. And you can explore this together if you're interested, or you can explore this on your own if you're interested. But unfortunately, CampusWire, I actually do not have a login for. CampusWire will not let you log in unless your institution is supported on their website, and they have to turn it on, essentially. So I contacted their support to turn it on, and they said, oh, we'll get it set up. And I got an email saying that it was set up, and then it still didn't work. So I'm mentioning it because I have heard at least one colleague say, this did exactly what I needed in the spring. So it might be something that you really like. But I cannot personally attest to it. I do find it a little frustrating that I haven't been able to log in just because, apparently they've decided to specifically make it so that institutions have to be turned on. B, their support told me that it was all set and then it wasn't. And C, the error that you get doesn't explain to you how to solve the problem. You just have to contact their support and say you can't log in. So it does seem to have a lot of features. I do run through the pros and cons as I was able to become aware of them on my webpage article describing the pros and cons of all the different platforms. So you might explore that if you want to. Two sites that I have used are Perusall and Piazza. So Perusall is designed around supporting, so this is one thing where I wanted to check in with folks. With regard to CampusWire, is there anyone out there who's used it who wants to say anything or has thoughts they want to share about it? I mean, let's face it, we could all use a break from my voice at this moment. So it sounds like there's no takers on CampusWire as of yet. Okay, so it might be worth looking into. Okay, so Perusall I have used with my class. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like on the web. Oops, I have to sign in. So I have it, oh, no. So I do have to share a different screen now because I have Perusall set up on my other computer. There are some, I use Perusall with my Google account, but this web browser has my personal Google account instead of my school Google account. So again, I will stop sharing and I will share my Firefox screen. Okay. And now, so I have it set up to sign in with Google. And what you can watch me do in real time is figure out how to share. So I've just copied this course code, and now I'm going to go to the chat and share that course code. If you go to perusall.com and type in that course code, you can join this. You should be able to join this course as a student. So you can get in there and kind of explore around if you want to. And so we'll just take a couple of moments and browse around the features of this. So as I mentioned, Perusall is designed around supporting reading assignments and student discussion of those reading assignments. One of the interesting things about Perusall is that it has automatic grading should you wish to take advantage of that. I have not used the automatic grading myself, so I can't speak to it. But I did become quite enamored with my ability to do mathematics with it. So I have currently created one assignment, and do let me know if folks have issues logging into that. I probably should have reached out to you, Elizabeth, beforehand to make sure that you were able to join. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And if I want to have a discussion, I just highlight a bit of the text, and then I can just start a discussion. So what is calculus? Oh, I see some people are joining. What is calculus really? Is that like, and then I can just, start typing some mathematics. Okay, and so that's in there, and the mathematics has always rendered very beautifully for me. If I want to edit that, I can just click on that message again. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Does someone need a Perusall account to log in as a student?
Yes, I apologize. I should have mentioned beforehand, all of these websites we're going to discuss are going to ask you to log in. So you do actually have to create an account to try it out. Yeah. Sorry, I definitely should have warned you ahead of time about that fact. Okay. Whoops. Yeah, and hopefully that's I used login with Google for mine, which I found to be convenient. You might wish to do it differently, or you might just decide that at this time you're not interested in creating any new web accounts, and so you can just kind of follow along instead. So you can see from my video that some other folks are joining in. So for example, Xiao, I can see, are you still in Perusall right now?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to try responding to that comment, or are you able to see that comment I made in Perusall? Ah, yes, and so Xiao was able to respond there. And then as the instructor, you can do lots of interesting things. Like, for example, you can say, okay, I really like the student response. And so you can click on that. And students can upvote each other's response if they like that. You can mention each other. Right. So in that sense, it's pretty modern. It has features that you expect from modern social media communication. Depending on your perspective on modern social media communication, that could be a pro or a con. It also supports chat rooms. So you can post announcements. You can create chat rooms. You can do one-on-one chat rooms with people. Right. So I can jump in there and chat with different individuals, or just go to general discussion. I have found, so here, this is something I created for myself. I was exploring this earlier on. I have found that the mathematics in the general chat is not quite as nicely supported as the mathematics in the overall chat. So let's see. Yeah, so you can only edit the most recent thing that you've created here. Actually, maybe not even the most recent. You can, this is much more restrictive. The general chat is much more restrictive than chatting based on discussions. Okay, so I'll just leave that open if people want to get in there and explore it and try it out. This Perusall class will just be open for a while if people want to try it out and see what's happening. You can see,
can students see, like, can students in these Perusall accounts see comments from other students, or? Students
can see and respond to each other, yes. It's designed for students to discuss with each other, and the instructor can take part in that. So for example, I am strongly considering using Perusall as an alternative to Blackboard for discussion forums overall, simply because it handles mathematics so much better. It's not designed as a discussion forum website, but it handles the math so much better that I might do that. Okay, so it looks like, oh, so Xiao is just showing again that you can kind of get some nice, oh, and Xiao is demonstrating to me that I don't need to just use the,
I'm sorry, I muted Keith again.
Okay. All right, so anyway, I think that's enough of looking at Perusall. You will decide for yourself whether or not that's something you want to investigate.
Oh, we have one more question though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So does it allow the professor to not allow anonymous posts by students?
I believe so. Let's see. That's a good question. I have not encountered anonymous posts, and so I don't remember off the top of my head if they can be turned off. And I know that most of these sites, you can configure that. So let's see, if we go to settings, this is just the start and end date, welcome message for the students, access, that's giving invitations, it'll automatically create discussion groups if you want it to. This is how you can establish the rubric. So let's see, I'm not seeing the settings in here for, let's see. So this is not just for chat. This is basically for grading related stuff. So that's a good question. I don't recall. So we'll have to explore that. Okay, so let me make a note of that.
Keith, can I say something real quick?
Ciao, go ahead.
I've heard that some other people try to have each student create like an internet name, whatever, and then they send it to the instructor, so instructor know who they are, but the students won't know who they are.
So you're saying that it is anonymous to between students, but not anonymous to the instructor?
Yeah, I think the platform is created so you actually grade the students, so you would want to know who they are when they say something. Yeah. That's my guess.
Yeah, I think that by design it doesn't support anonymous posting, but you can actually have the students use aliases, and that's basically what Xiao is saying, right? Okay, so
like sometimes people don't want anonymous posting.
Yeah, and I think I don't recall any anonymous posting, but I don't recall whether or not there was an option for that. So, okay. So I'm going to jump back into the presentation and look at a couple of other different options. All right. So yeah, like I said, I liked Perusall. I found that the buy-in for platforms like this depends heavily on the class demographic. More advanced classes, you get much better buy-in real quickly, and they're also just more comfortable even with the basic LaTeX mathematics. So a similar site, I'm not going to run through a demonstration of this simply due to time issues, but a similar site is Piazza. And Piazza it has been around for, I think, close to a decade now. You can see from the interface, it's basically a Q&A platform where students can post and ask and answer questions, discuss with each other, and their instructor can respond. You can organize it into folders. I used Piazza a few years ago. I found it okay, but again, buy-in is something you have to work with. In a completely online environment, Piazza is much more valuable to me than it was when I had 20 students that I saw every day in the classroom. So again, Piazza is something that I would strongly consider for the fall because it does provide a nice Q&A platform. What you can, essentially, Piazza is similar to Perusall without being built around reading assignments and discussing those assignments. So did anybody have comments about Piazza, if they've experienced working with Piazza that they wanted to share with everybody?
I actually just have a question about Piazza. How would you compare Piazza to like a traditional discussion board on Blackboard? Because I was looking at it a little bit in advance and trying to decide about differences, like whether to use something like that or a discussion board on Blackboard. And I'm trying to figure out what the differences are and
yeah, that's a good question. So why would you
trouble
want to use something like
trying
this?
to figure out what the differences are.
Yeah, so let me mention something I should have mentioned at the beginning. Most of these tools, including, I believe, Piazza, Perusall, definitely Perusall, because I've already set up Perusall as an LTI with our Blackboard. I got IT to do that. All of these things can hook into your learning management system through what's called LTI, which is Learning Tools Interface. So, for example, your students can go to the Blackboard class and you'll have a link there that just jumps them into this. But still, why go to an external site if it doesn't do better than the the learning management system itself? And my experience with Blackboard is simply that Blackboard is always a decade behind in technology. And so it kind of handles mathematics right now, but Piazza does a better, every single one of these things I'm talking about does a better job of it, as far as I'm concerned. The interface is more quick, more fluid, easier to navigate in. I feel like, again, Blackboard, is using, maybe not 1990s web technology, but you have to click through 5 different things to get anything done. This just handles things much more fluidly from kind of all perspectives, whether you're administering it or actually using it as a user. And you can see here how the mathematics that in this example renders nicely in the text. So it renders, even if you look in the kind of the list of different topics, you can see the mathematics is rendering nicely there as well. So for me, the primary thing is these things handle mathematics well, and they also simply are using modern web technology that is just snappier. It works a lot more in my experience. Does that address your question, Leah? Yeah, so you will find that there may be some features that these things have that your LMS doesn't have, and there may be some features that your LMS has that these don't have. For example, these do hook into your learning management system, but perhaps Piazza does not offer a direct way of grading discussion board participation in the same way that Blackboard does, or something like that. So those are details that you might have to check into. Okay, any other thoughts on Piazza that people wanted to share, or any of these kind of edu discussion platforms? Or is there one that you like that I missed?
Yes. How about, like, how do these compare to like Moodle discussion forums?
Moodle discussion forums? Yeah, so I think I would say it's similar to what I was saying about Blackboard. And I haven't used Moodle in close to a decade now, so I did explore, my wife has a Moodle login at her institution, and I did try getting Mathjax to work on that unsuccessfully. So you'll have to, you might have to explore these a little bit yourself to see if you like them better or not. But certainly they all render mathematics better than Moodle's default. So one thing I'll mention about Moodle later on is it supports mathematics both through a built-in filter and through Mathjax. And experimenting with my wife's setup, I was not able to get Mathjax to work. So they're supposed to be installed by default, but for some reason, Mathjax was not working on her server. And so Moodle's built-in tech rendering, again, is not very nice. It's showing, you know, blurry math images, not exactly where I want them to be. So so I have found with my experience with Piazza and my experience with Perusall, the mathematics is handled nice. It's just very snappy. It always looks nice, nicely done, nicely rendered in line. I haven't actually confirmed. I should have actually. If you're in Perusall now, you can try right-clicking and seeing if you get a Mathjax context menu. I don't know if they're directly using Mathjax or not. But. Okay, so
question, since we're here, so Piazza, it appears we see some feedback that it's more about like getting answers than it is about conversing.
It's a Q&A forum, yeah.
Is that also true in like Perusall?
Perusall is, so the threaded discussions that you saw there are basically the way it is. Perusall is built around discussing annotations in reading assignments. So you can use it for Q&A. So for example, students will often ask questions, and you can use the general chat to ask and answer questions. But it's not designed like a Q&A forum in quite the same way that Piazza and CampusWire are.
So it might be better for these conversations that you want to be continuing beyond like just a final answer. Yeah.
So, okay. So let's see, I kind of have run myself out of time already. I will mention very quickly that I have a Discord server if people want to explore Discord and see how you can chat with that. Discord is a general communications platform. It came from the world of gaming, and so it's kind of a little bit informal, but it has two nice tech bots, and I just shared a link to my Seaway LaTeX Discord server that I just created. So if you're interested, if you have a Discord account or are willing to create one, you can jump into this account and experiment with these bots. So let's see. So there we go. So Gina's joined. Hi, Gina. And if you look at the server, I'll just mention very quickly that if you look at the server, the channel topic, it tells you how to use the bots. One of the bots uses an equal sign to type your tech command, and the other one uses a comma. I will note that somebody felt happy enough with Discord after the spring that when they saw I was doing this workshop, they said, hey, you've got to talk about Discord. I loved it. It worked so great for me. So this is a kind of chat room style platform that lets you, that uses these bots to let you include mathematics in your discussion. It can also be used for voice or video chat if you want to. And so you can just kind of explore that if you want to. All right. And so Elizabeth just tried that out, and that worked nicely. So you might find that this is helpful. One thing to be aware of is that it doesn't inherently support LaTeX, it's through a bot. An alternative to Discord is Slack. Oh, so these are just some images examples of that. Also the TechIt bot in Discord actually lets you contact Wolfram Alpha and get some feedback. So if you do !ask in that Discord server, it'll run a Wolfram Alpha query. And my philosophy with Wolfram Alpha is you can't even pretend to hide it from students, so don't bother trying. Slack also exists and also has bots, but I will say that the most popular Slack bot and the easiest to install is now giving a message that it is going offline as of July 1st. So Slack might not be their best resource right now. There are other tools. I mentioned that on the webpage again when I discussed the different platforms. All right, so I guess we're going to run a little bit long. I hope that's okay. Folks who have to run can always access this this presentation and the various parts of my website. And feel free to email me if you need this link again. I'm just going to quickly mention a couple of other options. Google Docs has an add-on if you're just thinking about document creation, or maybe kind of a sneaky way of finding ways to communicate back and forth. Google Docs has an add-on called Auto LaTeX Equations. And Auto LaTeX Equations lets you render mathematics in the same way while typesetting in a word processor environment. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. Now, with Auto LaTeX Equations, or with Google Docs, again, you have to log in, and everybody has to have this add-on in order to use it. So this is the sharing link for this if you want to get in there and start experimenting with Auto LaTeX Equations. What you'll need to do is go to Add-ons, Auto LaTeX Equations. If you don't have it installed already, you'll want to click the install button, which will take you to the interface to install that. And then you get this nice little render sidebar. So you just want to go to Auto LaTeX Equations and click Start. And then you can render or de-render your equations. So this little sidebar that it creates lets you do that. And so you can get in there and experiment with creating some mathematics. This might be a great solution for students because it's just a word processing interface. The issue is they have to be able to use Google Docs to do it. Installing the add-on should be very straightforward, so hopefully that doesn't require much support. All right, so while folks are experimenting with what you can and can't do, so you'll notice that Auto LaTeX Equations in Google Docs actually is reaching out to codecogs.com to pick up these different tools. I'm going to kind of keep moving on while people explore that, just because I've basically run myself out of time. So most people are probably aware of Overleaf for online LaTeX, full online LaTeX document creation environment. And let's see, Overleaf has a nice free version, but there's a maximum number of collaborators on the free version. There's a competitor to Overleaf called Piazza, which has unlimited free collaborators, but Piazza's, the balance that they do is, well, you can only have one private document if you're using it for free. You can archive documents, but you only get one private document at a time. But you might still just create a Piazza account for your class and have people log into that if you wanted to. So this is full-on LaTeX document compiling, though. So there's a lot more involved in here. You might not want to do it with students that are not ready for that. Pretext, I'm not going to take the time to talk about it right now. Pretext is for if you want to publish your own documents. I love Pretext. You create your documents in XML, and then you can compile them for web, or you can compile them for directly through LaTeX to PDF. So it is write once, compile, and you compile however you want. It even has a Braille compiler now. So, so it's a beautiful, wonderful document system that handles the web environment nicely. And that's good if you're looking for a way to make your documents, your LaTeX documents, accessible. So Pretext, the one thing is, this is not for the faint of heart. It involves going and using GitHub to install it and a variety of other steps. And if GitHub scares you, then Pretext might be a little bit more, but it's not bad. Again, I did it, so if I did it, you can do it, I promise. And finally, I want to mention UpMath. UpMath is a really interesting kind of, it's one thing that it takes the opposite philosophy of Mathjax. Instead of rendering math on the fly, it wants you to be able to just have the images that exist. It does a pretty good job including the images, and you just get to it by going to upmath.me. UpMath uses markup language, and the way markup language works is basically it's meant to be pretty human readable and natural. And so if I type markup with 2 colons, it makes it bold, and then it appears over there. If I type, or not colon, sorry, asterisk. 1 asterisk is italicized, and so on. And UpMath is also doing the same kind of LaTeX rendering where it's creating an image file. And so what you can do is you can just go to this web page, type up the document you want, and click download, and it creates your document for you. You can view it all in HTML if you want. And so this is an alternative way of, oops. So this is what it looks like. You'll notice here that it did not render the original image because that image is on, this fancy image here is on their server. So that image is not showing up in my preview. But the LaTeX is using a different, we can see where, let's see. So the LaTeX is using, it's going out to these actual servers and picking up the mathematics stuff there. So, so this creates a solution that you might find a good alternative if the other solutions don't work for you for creating web content with mathematics built into it. It is just like a 1-person project. And so it's a little bit different, but you can just get the source if you want. If you're like, well, I don't want to rely on this guy's website for creating all this stuff. You can go get the code from GitHub and install it for yourself if you want to. He talks a little bit about his philosophy here in how he decided to do it as opposed to using Mathjax. Okay, so I do have one more platform that I want to explore before we call it a day. So, because I do think it's pretty neat. I will mention with all of these considerations, you should, if you're doing this stuff with your students, you should be thinking about privacy issues and FERPA. And all of these websites have anything where your students are actually contributing anything. They have very well spelled out privacy policies. Some of them specifically speak to FERPA, especially CampusWire and Piazza say, yes, we are FERPA compliant. Here's how, here's what you do. The other ones have fully laid out privacy things that I believe are FERPA compliant. So I want to mention Padlet finally. Padlet is nice. You can drop it in an iframe, which means if you want your students to just be inside your LMS, if your LMS supports iframes, which is just a way of embedding one page in another, then you can just have this visible there, and we can explore that later on if people want to try that out. The biggest downside of Padlet is it does not support online math or inline math, which is to say that it does not, you can't have mathematics inside your sentence. It has to be on its own line. I find that to be a pretty big downside, but the second biggest downside is that Padlet is just like way too whimsical. It's a very informal thing. So if you're looking for informal, it's great. But to get an image like this, it actually takes effort because when you create one of these little Padlets, it's going to have some kind of crazy, funky, fun design and have some crazy, funky, fun name. And you're going to have to go through the effort of like being, no, I want to be boring right now. So, so this is what it looks like. This is an example of maybe a concept map in Padlet where you've typed up some mathematics and you want to link these ideas to each other. And so you can see the mathematics displays pretty nicely. It's not quite as full-featured as the previous mathematics renderers that we were looking at. You'll notice that the integral symbol is small, even though it's displayed on its own line. And so you're not getting everything that you would get from the full-featured things, but it's still pretty nice. It does support matrices, for example. So here are some matrices and typical things that you would expect from AMS math. So, so let me share this Padlet with you. So this is a Padlet demo free-for-all. And so Padlet does support completely anonymous. I don't remember if this is set up to be anonymous or not. So let me share this with you. You can get in there and see if you can edit it anonymously or not. Okay, so clicking on that should take you to the Padlet website. And a person can, with only the link, depending on how the privacy settings are set, a person can get in there and either add things or modify things, or depending on your settings, even change settings of the Padlet itself. So there's fully private, there's password protected, there's secret, there's public, and then there's visitor permissions, which tell you what visitors can and can't do. So there's a lot of things about Padlet that I'm enamored with, but it's also kind of, it's a very informal thing, so it might not be right for your class depending on how you want to use it. Another downside is it doesn't boast a heck of a lot of organization. So once you start using one of these things very heavily, it can get disorganized very quickly. If you imagine a virtual bulletin board, it's just, people start putting things up there. If one of these bulletin boards is not well organized, then it can become less useful. So I noticed a bunch of people were able to jump into there. Has anyone been able to actually type? Oh, yep. So there's some anonymous typing going on. So to do the mathematics, what you want to do when you're editing a post is just type up your mathematics and then select the mathematics that you want and hit that pi key. And when you leave that, it will turn it into mathematics. And you can always go back into that, and there's your code again. When you leave, it's mathematics. So like I said before, unfortunately, I cannot say apple pie in one word. Ah, there we go, see? All right, so that's Padlet. That's worth exploring. It may offer features that you find are helpful. It could be a very good informal Q&A. You can set it so that it does not allow anonymous people to contribute. If you do not want anonymous people to let's see, so visitors can read, can write, let's see. So I know there's a way to turn off anonymous contributions, but I have to remember where it is. So it has pretty good full-featured let's see, is it here? Oh, and also let me add that you can turn on required approval. You can turn on and off attribution if you don't want to see who's posted it or you do want to see. You can even add grading to the Padlet for what it's worth. And you can change reactions like that. So that's worth looking into. This might be something that is interesting to you, or it might not quite be what you want. Okay. So for those of you who are still with me, thank you for staying on this long. I just want to briefly mention some other things that support mathematics. Desmos, or again, support LaTeX. Desmos, you can cut and paste LaTeX code into the math cells. So if you have a chunk of LaTeX, you can cut it, you can paste it right into there. GeoGebra supports LaTeX in its text tool. And CoCalc supports mathematics. Unfortunately, CoCalc is, they have a free version, but they're like, look, please don't use it free forever. If you like it, start paying us. So that's what I was saying before about, like, technically, if you use CoCalc free forever, you should probably feel guilty about that because you're not doing what they want you to do. But CoCalc is a very powerful programming thing.
On the same note, Keith,
yeah.
The website for Padlet says it's only free until late July.
Oh, okay. So Padlet, you might need to. Yeah, that's a good point. I got. Thank you for pointing that out, Elizabeth. I completely forgot about that. So Padlet itself might be something where if you decide to use it, you might look into whether it's worth the cost of that. So yeah, it's a nice. It handles some nice things. It handles some things pretty well. But yeah, it turns out. Oh, so just so people can see what I mean by whimsy, if I go back and create a new Padlet. So first of all, when you create a new Padlet, there's all kinds of options for the kind of Padlet you create, like a timeline or a map or communication, chat style communications. So you can do all of these different kinds of things. But when you do it, it always kind of creates random backgrounds. Actually, that's not too random. So maybe it's just the canvas that makes, so it gives you a kind of, charming name and a charming subtitle, made with a wish on a star. So that's what you're going to get from Padlet. And usually when you create them, you get really, really wacky designs in the background that I immediately get rid of. Oh, that's not too bad. So now I'm getting some actually pretty nice designs. But at any rate, yeah, you might find that it's not a good tool for you, especially if it does end up becoming non-free later on. Okay, so Desmos and GeoGebra are very nice. Very quick rundown of learning management systems in the last minute. And then if people want to hang out and chat about their LMS specific experiences. Basically, across the world of LMSs, the feedback I seem to have gotten is it works. I can get LaTeX to work in my LMS, but it's not wonderful. It doesn't do fantastic. Blackboard's built-in LaTeX is pretty ugly. You can get Mathjax to work in some areas, but for example, it does not work in discussion board posts. Moodle has filters for both built-in and for Mathjax, and they should actually both play well together, but unfortunately, I was not able to get the Mathjax filter to work. Canvas has built-in support through Advanced View. Brightspace has built-in support. Now, this might not be true, so folks with Brightspace can correct me, but I think I read that you can't actually get your original LaTeX code back because it converts it to MathML and stores the MathML. But I might be wrong about that. Sakai can be enabled through your site. If you turn on the Mathjax as a tool, then you should be able to use Mathjax as Sakai. And Schoology also has built-in support through the insert content menu. And all of these things are, everybody's going to have a very individual experience based on their own institution. So were there things people wanted to chat about regarding the different LMSs, or?
Should we do that through like the more informal conversation?
Yeah, maybe we'll wait, and that way people can kind of hook up. You can hook up with each other in the chat, or we can even do breakout sessions if people want to chat about their own getting their own LMS to work. I do have, again, on the web page, I do have lots of details, the best details I could get for each of these different LMSs. There's a lot of generic discussion here, and then just for everything except for Blackboard, it's basically a paragraph that says, okay, these were on page 1 of a Google search, and it's the best I was able to find. Blackboard, I have a lot more discussion about what I was able to do. Okay, so then I am at the end of my part. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you've found something helpful or useful. If you have thoughts you'd like to share, further questions you'd like to ask, or if you want to just kind of work together to explore software, you're all welcome to. Thanks so much to Elizabeth for asking me to do this and for setting it up, and thanks also to Ryan for helping to organize it.
Let's thank Keith while we're here. Feel free to use the clapping, which is, I think you can clap somewhere under reactions. I'm gonna stop the recording, so you can also unmute yourself and clap out loud.